So today I wanted to talk about creepy house movies. So in the horror genre, creepy houses have been a staple more or less since the beginning. Um, it, we always have like an attachment to these big, spooky, weird buildings that have been abandoned. They might have stories that we're not familiar with, and so it's kind of captured the imagination for a long time. They factored in a lot of horror stories and a lot of horror films. So this is just like a select number of them. The first one, because it's probably maybe the best known on this list, is House on Haunted Hill from 1959 with Vincent Price. This was one of William Castle's kind of gimmicky films where he would occasionally, like, in select audiences, have a skeleton run through the theater to shock people. So that's fun. Another one, which is actually a horror comedy and very, very early in the horror comedy genre, is The Cat and the Canary. I also have the one from 1938, which is in a much less pretty case than this one. This one is silent, but a bunch of relatives that all go to this big creepy house in the middle of nowhere to try and collect an inheritance under weird circumstances, and then there's someone who's trying to burgle them. You know, it's a pretty common shtick. The Old Dark House has a similar tone to it, except this one is from James Whale and it has sound. But again, it's kind of a similar thing to The Cat and the Canary. Another one that's worth mentioning, if you're a fan of Shirley Jackson, I know The Haunting of Hill House TV show has been a big hit lately. I haven't had the chance to watch all of it. But The Haunting from Robert Wise from 1963 is another one worth noting. Even though it's not exactly true to the book, it is much closer than the TV show. Nell is a little, or Eleanor is a little less than desirable in the film adaptation, but it is still a very good film, and there is something distinctly wrong with this house, even though ghosts are not explicitly stated. It is still a very interesting story to tell. Another one from 1981 in the slasher genre is Hell Night with Linda Blair. In this case, it is a sorority hazing gone wrong. So that one's kind of goofy, but also worth checking into. Out of all those goofy, weird slasher films, that one worked out a little better than a lot of the ones that I expected from that era. Another one, which is again from the 30s, is The Black Cat with Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi, that is filmed in this big, weird Art Deco mansion. And the building is probably the best part of the film. I mean, there's a lot of good elements as well, but the house itself is definitely a major factor in why this is a good one. There's another adaptation of The Black Cat from 1942 that's a little more like The Cat and the Canary, but I don't have a copy of that. Another one worth noting, even though the house is not the main figure, it definitely has some ominous cameo parts, is The Babadook. This idea of something living in the basement that you shouldn't go into and all these exaggerated shadows and everything, it does factor into the storytelling. Another one, if you really like Halloween goodies, this one takes place on Halloween night in an old, I believe, mortuary. Yeah, it's Hull House, a funeral home. And then demons are unleashed in it. And, I mean, it's an abandoned building that people get trapped into because they summon demons. This one is a perfect Halloween watch because, at the very least, Angela's dance to Bauhaus's Stigmata Martyr will always make me happy. Another one, which I just watched in the theater very recently, is The Changeling. And so this big, beautiful house in Seattle has been occupied by the ghost of a small boy. And it is a very intimidating house that they couldn't let for whatever reason, and then the boy gets his revenge by destroying it in the end. But this is a good little murder mystery. It's more spooky than truly scary. A little more subtle. This one's kind of an odd one, and I can't remember how I stumbled across it, especially because this DVD is kind of a pain in the ass to get in the US. Spookies. It's kind of one of those let's throw everything at the wall and see what sticks type of films. A bunch of teenagers decide to go and hang out in this big abandoned house they probably shouldn't be in, and then there's a spider lady, there's ghosts, there's demons, there's zombies. I think there might be werewolves. Maybe. Muckmen. I don't know. There's kind of just sort of everything in it. It's not terribly good, but if you want to see how crazy you can get with, oh, what can be coming out of this house, apparently you get this one. Another one, if you like Giallo, if you like Lucio Fulci. There is House by the Cemetery. There are zombies and eye gougings and gore galore. And a young boy named Bob, who's very clearly dubbed by an adult woman, which I think is the crowning achievement of this film. Another good treat would be I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House. It's not precisely scary, but it is highly atmospheric, and the disjointed storytelling, I think, works in its favor. There's definitely a very good sense of style with Oz Perkins films. So that one's another one worth looking into, especially if you have Netflix. Another one, which I'm not especially fond of, I'm really indifferent to, and I think the whole thing's kind of just ridiculous, is the Amityville Horror. I have seen the remake and I've seen the first one, but I haven't seen any of the sequels. I'm not generally impressed by it, but as far as famous haunted house films go, that and The Legend of Hell House are pretty landmark ones, but I haven't seen Legend of Hell House, so I'm not going to include that one. Another really crazy Japanese one that I have not had the luxury of picking up a copy yet is House from 1977, also called Hausu, and that one's just a lot to take in. I can't even begin to describe it. I mean, there's a giant evil cat, a piano eats somebody, and there's a very peculiar sense of humor. Another good one, which is a little more on the comedy side than the horror side and doesn't have supernatural elements, which is not really kind of sort of spoiler, is Housebound from New Zealand from 2014. This one I do really enjoy, and I highly suggest it. I think it's very underrated, but this big former boarding house has weird goings on that this girl finds out when she's been put under house arrest. Another one with Karen Black and Oliver Reed from Dan Curtis is Burnt Offerings from 1976. The house itself is possessed by something and wants to take Karen Black's character as its carekeeper. I don't even know how to begin to describe that one, but the house itself is really cool. If I ever get the chance to go to Oakland and visit it in real life, I would like to. It's also the exterior of the funeral home in Phantasm. Another one, which I appreciate because I like Adam Ant and Full Moon features, is Spellcaster. In this case, it's not necessarily a house, but a castle in Italy. And a mysterious benefactor invites a bunch of people to a big castle in the chance of getting money, because that's how this usually pans out. And then spooky shit starts happening. Then Adam Ant is the spellcaster at the end of the film, and that's really the best part about it. Another one, House. Vietnam vet tries to rent this or go back to this house, and then he gets haunted by really weird ghosts. This is more of a horror comedy. The house itself is not especially frightening, but the ghosts are certainly out there. Another one which is not so great, but still worth looking into if you want a really beautiful building to look at, is The Nesting from 1981. It's kind of boring sometimes, but I did get a kick out of it, and I don't recommend skipping it if you like that type of film. But someone who is very agoraphobic ends up holing up in this house in the country that she'd had dreams about, and then the ghosts start telling her things about the house. So that one's kind of hit or miss. There's also the remake of House on Haunted Hill, which was okay. I didn't mind it. I like Jeffrey Rush, and I thought that it was kind of fun, although admittedly it dated itself upon its release. Everything about it says, hey, I was made in 1999, and didn't age that well. But, again, big, creepy, spooky house that has a lot of atmosphere. So pretty much when it comes to the haunted house films, you have the family that unwittingly moved into a house that was haunted. You have the young people that have decided to crash a house that they probably shouldn't be in. You have people collecting a fortune, and that's kind of it. There's very particular tropes, and this is just a handful of examples. Anyway, maybe check out a couple of these. I don't know if you have any others within that particular niche that you like. Feel free to recommend them in the comments. Until next time, Darklings.